This map is a lie. Maybe it's just based on pre-war data. Seems kinda plausible, but it misses the mark anyway for us as the player. It's a fib that gets the job done most of the time. Bethesda loves these big overpass highways. They love them so much that in Fallout 3 they put them all over the map, even in places that make no sense, and in Fallout 4 they added a second tier to them and they still didn't make sense. Thing is, I like them too. I think they're mysterious and weird. They lean into that alternate timeline Fallout's America is set in. Things are supposed to be familiar, but also different enough to make you wonder what had become of this world, and not just different in that it had been nuked, of course, but different in that the world wasn't quite the one we know. I've gone ahead and scribbled up a map of the Capitol Wasteland's highway system. The road naming here isn't perfect, quite frankly. It can't be, but what it can be is approximate and useful for our purposes. We need something to call these roads, and the game doesn't bother to label them. Fallout 3's roads do not work for cars. Not just after being lightly dusted with radioactive seasoning and crisped in a nuclear oven. They wouldn't have worked anyway. It's not just that they're kinda wrong or a little off, they're a goddamn nonsensical nightmare. Being in an automobile on one of these things would have been a frightening experience and perhaps one of the last experiences you had. That's where we come in. Envy Ranger & Co. here to save the day and do some very, very, very important work. Bill and I have been hired to head east and inspect the highway system by a contact within the NCR who's involved in their infrastructure. Our inspection of the Capitol roadways will begin in the northeast near Olney. Bill and I worked a shift at a nearby office to blend in with the locals, wouldn't want them catching on to our true business here. Then we walked over to the parking lot and hopped in our freshly uninsured, tax-deductible ride. Objective 1. Get on Interstate 95 so we can head home back to our families. We turned out the parking lot and started driving. A turn here and a turn there and another turn here and there, and eventually we found a ramp. Bill noted some severe issues to begin with. The ramp was incredibly steep. Perhaps the nuclear devastation exaggerated this a bit, but it was still true. A steep, single-lane, limited visibility ramp of doom up to the highway. We felt like we were playing an uphill game of bowling, but we were the ball and the pins were nuclear and moving. Merging would be an absolute nightmare. And an accident? Forget it. You poke one of these cars and they get volcanic. Imagine ramming into one doing 70, 80, 90, 100 miles an hour. Not to mention, there's no lane to be in while you merge. Once you're off the ramp that has barriers blocking your visibility, mind you, you're now on the highway. Immediately. Lucky for us, everyone is dead. We were driving north and then Bill said, "Hey, where the hell are we going? I live south of Olney, not north." I was like, "Bill, we don't actually live here." He demanded, "No, we need to go south on 95 towards DC. I wanted to be a good partner, so I played along. We kept driving and realized there was no exit. Not an official one, at least. If you go far enough north, the highway will just plummet into the earth. We decided to do an illegal U-turn in the middle of the highway and go back the way we came. Now that we were off the highway once again, we started looking for a southbound ramp for I-95. We looked, and we looked, and we drove, and we drove. There wasn't one. There never was. Not only is there not a ramp to get on to go towards DC, but there's also not a ramp for the drivers on the road to get off the road. Like anywhere. Here is some lore I'll bet you didn't know. The I-95 was an infamous forever and never road of the pre-war where drivers were endlessly trapped. You can only get on and there is no getting off, unless you do what we did and just whip a 180 in the middle of high-speed traffic to go back the way you came. This would of course cause a nuclear accident, devastating nearby drivers and crumbling the very structure of the road. Many would die in the accidents, even people down below would have debris falling on top of them. This was a deep state initiative for population control and would also force constant infrastructure maintenance to repair the destroyed highway, giving them access to adjust their experiments. But you didn't hear that from me. After a thorough inspection of the I-95 with Bill, we realized there are only 3 ramps to get up to this road, and they are all going north. Not a single exit exists, and not a single southbound entrance exists, all the way from the north of Olney to the District of Columbia. Truly fascinating modern design. We'll call post-war I-95 the Forever Never Freeway. Objective 2. Inspect the Capitol Beltway, also known as Interstate 495. This is a well-known roadway that loops around the DC area. I have to let you know, I have lied to you. It's happened. I hope you can move on. Good luck. Anyway, I lied when I said you cannot get off of 95. Sort of. 95 ends up connecting to this Capitol Beltway. How it connects is quite fascinating. So look here on this map made by some mysterious Google outfit, apparently. It shows how I-95 connects with our Capitol Beltway. Notice its curves, loops, intertwining ramps and lanes that bring things together in a symphony of controlled chaos. 95 is running generally north and south. The Capitol Beltway, at this point at least, is running generally east and west. So drivers greatly benefit from the ability to come from the east and go west or north, come from the north and go east or west, and so on. You get the point, I hope. Well, here's what this looks like in our capital wasteland. Bill and I have found a legally questionable way to get on the southbound side of 95 and approach this interchange with caution. Bill had somehow managed to get an apartment in Tacoma Park. All we had to do was get on the Capitol Beltway and head east, then find an exit, and we could get to his home and feed his dog. As we approach, you'll notice, coming from the I-95, you can only go west on the Beltway. There is no way for us to go east. Likewise, when we approach this setup while driving on the Beltway coming from the east, you can only hop on 95 north out of DC or proceed west. Big thing here, if you haven't noticed, the side of the road that runs clockwise on the Beltway is entirely cut off. You cannot access it, and those driving on it cannot escape. Another forever never road. I thought to myself, this must be only at this interchange though. Surely. We have to get to Bill's new apartment and feed his new dog. What kind of city is this? So we proceeded from I-95 onto the Beltway and headed west, looking for an exit or a loop. We carried on and ended up finding a series of overpasses and underpasses. Other roads were so close, but there were no interchanges, no way to get to those roads from the one we were on. It was like we were on a moving island, an isolated highway. We passed by a super duper mart, tummies grumbling. Perfect. We could pick up some dog food and snacks for the road. We were getting so hungry at this point we might even just snack on some dog food. If we could only get to it. It would be perfect. Imagine the world where you could somehow connect a massive throughway dense with traffic, hungry apes just dying to get into a building full of ultra-processed delicious food, like one of Vault-Tec's torturous experiments were forced to pass by the grocery store with no way of getting to it, trapped on the Capitol Hellway. Bill told me to calm down, but the same was true when we passed this Dot's Diner. No way to get to it from the road we were on without just flying over the curb. Can't even get a vehicle up here legally. Gotta park down below and walk up the stairs. I guess they have a strict no handicap policy here. Someone desperate enough managed to park their motorcycle up top. Bill decided to give them a ticket, place them under citizen's arrest, and toss them in our trunk. I thought kidnapping was a step too far, but we carried on to find a point where we could finally turn around and head east so we can feed Bill's dog in Tacoma Park. We ended up passing the Nuka-Cola plant. Bill was excited. This was his second favorite soda pop after all. He said, "My dog can wait. I need to get my hands on a Nuka-Cola." Bill was devastated to find out that we couldn't get into the plant. It must have been a top secret location for the company because not only was there not a connection from our road to the plant, there was no way to get to the front door from anywhere. No road, no path, no nothing. The only way to sensibly get into the plant from a road was the loading area out back, and that certainly wasn't an entrance made for us. The nightmare on the Hellway continued. Bill was silent for a while after that. I think it really hurt him. The rejection was starting to get to him. Me too. This inescapable road trapping us in motion. I felt like a lab rat in a twisted experiment, like someone was watching us suffer, watching how we reacted to endless disappointment. We noticed multiple instances where some side street just appeared to intersect with the highway. No traffic lights or even a stop sign, but the roads never fully connected. Always a touch of rubble to hide the truth. There were overpass bridges and road signs that failed to meet height standards. Buses and trucks alike would have been sliced at the top. And when those accidents happened and cars began piling up, leaving drivers waiting for the damage to be cleared, who would come to save the day? There was no way to get on this road as far as we could find, not safely at least. Bill and I proceeded with caution, realizing a fender bender could be the end of us. We finally made it to the end of the Beltway in this direction and looked off into the vast remains of DC, the skeletons in the distance with light peeking through their wounds. A giant pile of rubble lay in front of us, and I began to weep. Bill slapped me and told me to pull it together. We climbed to the top of the rubble and saw that the road just ended after that. When we turned around to go in the opposite direction, we finally found an exit. We were filled with joy, only to find that the exit just led to the parking lot of the Pentagon. The realization that this truly was all just a government experiment on the citizens of DC had finally set in. Bill and I had been sent here to study infrastructure for the NCR, but our mission was changing before our very wheels. Was the NCR hoping to mimic these experiments by building its own hellway? Things were going from bad to worse. On the way east towards Tacoma Park, we passed a red rocket station back at that interchange from earlier. Of course, you know where this is going at this point. No way to get to it. We were hardened vets of critical highway failure by now. Weirder than the lack of access was the red rocket stations in DC don't even have convenience stores next to them. What kind of consumer-driven world is this? Can't even buy a box of sugar bombs and an ice-cold Nuka-Cola for the road. What we truly weren't prepared for was the reality that we were never going to make it to Tacoma Park. The hellway began to rise up into the heavens. We were nearly as high as the tallest buildings until it eventually carried us off into the vast and endless expanse of nothingness. Bill took a moment to mourn his apartment and dog. The roadways had failed us, but we wouldn't fail our mission. It was time to move on. Post-war name for this one is, of course, the Capitol Hellway. Objective 3. Route 1, perhaps the most mysterious of all the routes. Now, if you look at the Pip-Boy map that lies, Route 1 appears to reconnect to the Capitol Beltway, but alas, we have discovered the lies once again. Route 1 never took people to 495. It took them into a trap. Now, as the road goes south, it leaves the bounds of existence, but that's not the spicy bit. As the road proceeds throughout the world space, we find it was leading cars directly into a dense set of buildings. And don't give me that, oh, there was a nuclear war, the earth shifts and yada yada. There's not a nook or a cranny this 4-laned overpass highway was squeezing through in all this chaos. They were sending drivers and office workers alike to their doom. DC knew Carmageddon long before it ever met Armageddon. There's even some of those high-speed rails up here in this mess, but these roads and rails never make it out of this concrete jungle. There is no other side, nothing for them to connect to. Where the map of lies tells us Route 1 connects to 495, it just never happens. Just an illusion, a fib of a freeway. This little area up here reminds me of world spaces like Sleeping Dogs, for example, where oftentimes we get the impression of a completely open world, but there are portions of space hidden from us, tucked away not at the edges of the map, but right in the middle of it all. We look at a map like this and think, at face value, this is the size of Fallout 3's map. It is this big, but it's not. How many areas just like this tactically make use of buildings and rubble to make an open world a bit more linear than we realize? Bill was growing concerned about my mental state as I yapped about nothing to no one, so we proceeded to Objective 4. Route 1 in the post-war is now to be known as the Road to Nowhere. Objective 4. Our big city troubles needed some small town adjustments. It was time to get out of the urban density and into the country crossings. We would begin that journey in Fairfax with Route 66. This is one of our more interesting highways because it has two entirely distinct sections. The section that leaves east out of Fairfax
East? I thought you said west.
has a major strike going against it. We can see the large risen highway transitions from the sky above with 4 lanes suddenly into 2, right as it enters Fairfax. Oftentimes, a major highway such as this would continue as its own road and use a series of exit and entrance ramps to offload traffic, but since the civil engineers of the pre-war leaned more towards cryptic social experiments instead of sensible urban planning, we don't have that. Route 66 just dumped its traffic straight into the heart of Fairfax, flooding its streets with endless road rage and confused commuters. On the bright side, you don't have to worry about paying rent. You'll never get home to need a home anyway. Just sleep in your car, the traffic will still be there in the morning. As 66 exits the map to the east, you'll find no exits or entrances. You get on in Fairfax and you stay on. Hope you don't need a bathroom other than your pants. And on these roads, we don't call them accidents, we call them permanents, because there is almost nowhere for an emergency vehicle to get on the road to help you. 66 then trails off up into the misty, mysterious mountains, taking you deep into Appalachia. In the other direction, going north out of Fairfax, Bill and I found an intersection with a stop sign and a traffic light. They just really wanted to confuse you here. Imagine you have a green light, but you have to stop at the stop sign just to avoid getting a ticket. This section of road took us from Fairfax all the way to Bethesda, another riveting rampless journey. When Bill and I arrived in Bethesda, we noticed the highway split into two different directions. On our Pip-Boy map of lies, the road appears to run straight through town, but we can see this is clearly not the case. I thought I had these roads figured out, but I clearly don't. If you look at the map on the left, this is a more accurate map. We can see where the road is kind of supposed to merge with the 495 Beltway, but it's destroyed. We don't know exactly what happens if it loops down onto the road below or goes to the Beltway. But for the map on the right, the actual Pip-Boy map in-game, it just doesn't really represent anything. I'm not sure what's going on here. This must be an older rendition of what the map looked like at some point in development, but it doesn't look like this at all. I'm confused at what it's even trying to display. The 495 Beltway is in the entirely wrong location, it appears. I'll put the maps side by side and just focus on these two areas, these two setups. The roads are entirely different. This is just not accurate on the Pip-Boy at all. And because of that, we don't know that this road actually links on to the 495 Beltway. Sure, there's rubble and damage where the roads might have joined, but isn't it convenient that every time a road might connect to another, someone has destroyed all of the possible evidence for it? I'll keep my tinfoil helmet on when I'm driving on these roads, thank you very much. Things are even fishier here than in Boston. The other side of the fork in the road just takes you into Bethesda, not really much to note. There is, however, a red rocket station soon after we get off the highway, and you can actually get to it, so that's an improvement. Good work. Not sure what you're supposed to do at these things though, just kind of put your car here and take a picture of it, I guess. Say cheese. Route 66 has earned an additional 6, the Devil's Detour. Objective 5. Welcome to Route 7, the most devious and deranged of all the highways in the Capitol Wasteland. Bill and I needed a coffee and a cig to get through this one, but Bill reminded me we didn't smoke and slapped the cig out of my hand. What nonsense was this? Big nonsense. Can't explain this one away with post-war damage. Again, at the scene of the crime, 2 lanes become 4, nothing but destruction to explain away the unimaginable transition. Then the road takes us into a big bend over the Potomac, for scenic purposes, I suppose. We don't even cross the river. We dip out over it and scurry back inland as if the water was too cold. Got a sneaking suspicion they just wanted to stab some giant concrete supports into the river's ecosystem, the sick bastards. What comes next, you ask? The highway just ends. That's it. We get to this awkward hilly intersection, and then the overpass returns to the earth. Once again, 4 lanes become 2, and once again, they hide how this occurs with the debris and rubble of lies and false promises. Oh, it's not done there, though. There are 2 distinct roadways over here. Another 4-lane bridge over the Potomac, and once again, as soon as the whole bridge part ends, we're back to 2 lanes. It's absolute chaos. We have a highway set up lasting the width of a river. What is the point? These roads you exit onto have 50-mile-per-hour speed limits. Imagine making a bridge a highway so people can do 70 plus with an intersection on either end. This little strip of highway up here is shorter than Route 1 down near Arlington, but at least that one had the decency to hide its nonsense out of bounds. This one just sits out in the open as if it had something to be proud of. It's downright disturbing, dubious, and disgusting. Just shaking its ass in our face. You'd expect these stretches of highway to flow off into destroyed areas or fade off out of the map. But no, they're just highway that isn't highway. I guess. I don't know. I mean, look at our map. 95 stretches across nearly the whole dang thing before connecting to the 495 Beltway. 66 is about just as long in the opposite directions. They cover distance, get people from A to B. Even if they do it poorly, even if they don't do it at all, at least they try. The twin routes up here just make no sense. Scratch that. All the previous roads made no sense. This one makes less than no sense. It makes negative sense. It's a black hole, and the longer we stay here, the further we get sucked in. It's time to leave, to finish what we started. It's time to head north. Route 7, the Black Hole Bridges. Objective 6. Our supposed Route 270 is centrally located just north of Germantown. Like some of the others, it comes rolling down out of the surrounding mountains, leaving us wondering what lies beyond. Bill and I were sent here to inspect and investigate what lies within, however, and this was the end of the proverbial and literal road. You know the drill at this point. No way on, no way off. Vanishes into oblivion. No, not that oblivion. This one has a unique and mysterious crescendo to leave us with, though. Notice on the handy-dandy Pip-Boy map of lies, we're told this road connects to 95 just to the southwest of the Grizzly Diner. Well, let's see if the promises of diner food are true. Of course they're not. Are you new here? The highway simply vanishes. What's odd about this vanish is that we have the high-speed rail line that runs parallel to it just down below. It's not far from the road at all, but it persists nonetheless. How was it that this highway was eviscerated to the point that it doesn't even leave a trace behind, but the rail line still stands and carries on? Beyond that, if we follow the trail this road was meant to follow over to the Grizzly Diner, nothing. Not a pile of rubble, not a speck of debris, not a pole of rebar. It simply doesn't exist anymore. We have some faint pathing down below, a bus near this barn, but not much more. And there's no proof the bus came from the highway. It easily could have been driven there from a local road down below. No proof that the faint paths have anything to do with this supposed highway either. How does the barn along the way, or the local roads down below, still exist? They are right where this large overpass would have been. If enough destruction occurred here to completely wipe out the highway, why does nothing else seem to have suffered a similar fate? And just as usual, where this road would have linked to 95, nothing but a pile of rubble to hide the evidence of their joining. Like a forbidden marriage kept secret from the parents, we may never know. It's almost like someone doesn't want us to know. The secrets, the experimentation. A dark ghost of unethical and nonsensical infrastructure haunts these wastes. This isn't a design to study and replicate. It's a monstrosity to remember and fear. Let the Capitol Wasteland's roads be a warning to all. Bill and I had unfinished business with a dog and an apartment. Roads weren't going to take us there, so we'd find other means to get it done. We remembered we still had the fella Bill arrested in the trunk too. We decided to let the gods and devils of this infrastructure decide his fate. We buckled him into our car. We wouldn't need it where we were headed anyway. Then we set him onto the I-95, a hell I wouldn't wish on my greatest enemy, but it wasn't my decision, it was Bill's. Route 270, officially known as the Missing Mile. My report to the NCR is as follows. Capitol Wasteland's highways are worse than the Commonwealth's. Clear social and unethical human experimentation is present. Road rage likely destroyed this city long before the bombs. Send dog food. 3 bags, 2 spoons, please.